Hello and welcome to True Crime Daily, the podcast updates. In November, Sidebar podcast host Josh Ritter joined me to discuss the case of Taylor Parker. This is a woman who faked her own pregnancy and then attacked a young pregnant mother, cut her baby out of her womb in the hopes of passing that child off as her own. Reagan Hancock, the 21-year-old mother, as well as her daughter, Braxlynn, were both killed in that attack. Taylor went on trial in September of 2022 for capital murder in connection with the 2020 stabbing death of Reagan and her daughter. She was found guilty in October, and on November 9th of 2022, a jury sentenced her to death. Let's look back at the episode where Josh and I discussed Taylor's trial and conviction. Our next case is also out of Texas, and this is where at least a little bit of justice has been served this week with the conviction of what truly is a sick and deranged woman who killed a pregnant woman, cut out and stole that woman's unborn baby girl, and then tried to pass it off as her own. This story makes me sick. We covered this just as the trial was beginning, and so many of you weighed in and left comments, not only about how disturbed you found this, but also you had a lot of questions. And because the trial was just starting and we knew that prosecutors were holding on to a lot of evidence, we didn't know a lot of, we knew a lot of details, except now we know a lot more. So I want to revisit this case. One, I want to let you know she's been convicted. And this is a capital murder case. So she, in the next phase, is going to face the possibility of the death penalty. But the question over and over again that you all have asked, and I'm asking, and I swear to you, I still can't answer it, but I got a little bit more context, is how could the boyfriend not know? How could others not know? But as we reported last time on the podcast, there were people who knew. There were people who were suspicious. She would post photos of a sonogram, and then she'd refer to a clinic, and then the clinic would call her and say, you better take that down because you're not pregnant, because we know because you had a hysterectomy. You can't have any more children. So people were calling her out on it, but nonetheless, she still got away with it for all these months. It's lunacy.
It is.
I'm like out of breath just thinking about this. It upsets me so much, and it's not just, there are two victims here. It is the mother and the little baby girl, Braxlynn, who didn't survive. It's horrible. So there were 3 weeks of graphic and emotional testimony in a Bowie County courthouse. The jury this week found 29-year-old Taylor Parker guilty of capital murder for killing 21-year-old Reagan Hancock and the abduction of her unborn baby, Braxlynn. The jury of 12, equally split, men and women, took a little less than an hour. It probably just took that long because they had to walk to and from the room. Otherwise, they would have been done in 2 minutes, is my guess.
Yeah, that speaks volumes, really. When a jury comes back, I mean, it takes a while for jurors to just introduce themselves back in a deliberation room. So for them to get immediately to the business at hand and within less than an hour decide a case of this magnitude just shows you how convincing that evidence was to them.
And there was a ton of evidence that had already been made public. For God's sakes, the woman, the accused killer, was found on the, with the baby in her lap, and the baby's umbilical cord and placenta attached. And this woman, Taylor, she stuffed the placenta and the umbilical cord into her pants, making it look like, she had just given birth. No. The insanity of all this, the insanity of it. Oh my God, she upsets me. All right. And the motivation for this, like why? Because Taylor wanted to hold on to her boyfriend. Yeah.
Just incredible. Just it's sickening.
Okay. So let's do a little revisit of the case, and then we'll get into all the new details because they're pretty extraordinary. Taylor and Reagan were Facebook friends. Taylor even attended Reagan's engagement party and wedding. It almost feels like a setup. Like Taylor needed a baby and she had her sights set on Reagan. Now, Taylor already had 2 children of her own. She had them before her hysterectomy. They were from previous relationships. And what's interesting is that before there was even a trial, we already knew that she had been stalking maternity stores, maternity clinics, had gone to like a teen pregnancy, support group. She was everywhere stalking anyone who was pregnant because she was looking for a baby.
And this is where it really gets scary, is the idea of how much planning, and like you said, stalking she put into all of this. This wasn't some, she fell into some sort of psychotic episode and decided that she needed this baby. There may have been another victim if it wasn't Reagan. She was dead set on fulfilling this absolutely insane plan. And the more that we're finding out and the more you're going to tell us about, it's incredibly scary to see the amount of deliberation and planning that she put into all of this.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? And then, I read all your comments from the last podcast, and a few of you, there was one in particular who said that when she was pregnant, she was so worried about others doing something like this, that she would dress in her husband's clothing as big as possible so as to not attract attention. And then someone else on YouTube, thank you all because you're so wonderful, posted the statistics of how often this happens, that pregnant women are killed by other women who are trying to take their baby. And this is in addition to all the babies that they're always trying to, you hear about the snatchings from hospitals or babies out of strollers or in the restroom. I mean, it happens. It really does happen. So it's, geez. And you think she's running around getting license plates, looking at pregnant women, trying to figure out who's going to be due on the day that she needs the baby. That's the other thing.
In addition to this elaborate scheme to fool everybody into thinking that she's pregnant. So, I mean, literally, she's already decided, it sounds like, she's going to commit this heinous murder. And she has a deadline for it because she needs to have it fulfilled at the time of when her expected fake pregnancy would take place. I mean, it's just diabolical and psychotic.
Oh, the worst, the absolute worst. So on the day of the murder, this would have been October 9th of 2020, Taylor told everyone that she was having labor induced that day. So she needed a baby when she got to Reagan's house. That's when she killed Reagan and she cut the baby out. She grabs Braxlynn, umbilical cord, placenta still attached, and she makes a run for it. She's speeding. And a Texas trooper pulls her over for speeding. And then when he looks at her, she's got a baby. And she tells the trooper, I had labor. I pulled over on the side of the road and I had the baby. So now the trooper's like, oh my God, right? I see a baby. I see a woman. I see an umbilical cord. Rushes her by ambulance and the baby to the hospital. Braxlynn doesn't survive. And then Taylor's acting really weird, like she won't accept any medical treatment, but she's just given birth on the side of the road and been rushed by ambulance. So people at the hospital are like, what the heck's going on here? Meanwhile, not too far away at Reagan's house, this bloody crime scene is being discovered by Reagan's own mother, Braxlynn's grandmother.
And it is, not to gloss over it and not get too gory about the details, but it is an incredibly brutal murder. I mean, we're not talking about, I don't even know, one gunshot wound to the head, or we're talking about an incredibly intimate way of killing someone. And then again, not to get too graphic, but the idea of what she had to do to get that baby out of her body is just, the insanity is overwhelming.
The photos, the evidence had to be presented to the jury. Reagan's parents, family had to leave the courtroom. It was just too graphic. It was too much, because the jury had to see everything, the crime scene. Yeah. And one of the things was that Taylor, when she finally admitted to what she did, and she said, oh, well, I left the scalpel there. And the cops are like, but we couldn't find the scalpel until they do the autopsy, and the scalpel is wedged into Reagan's neck. And so they showed the jury the x-ray of the scalpel wedged in her neck. It was horrific.
Yeah. And there's this anger and kind of personalness about it too. It wasn't just simply she wanted the baby, but she just destroyed this poor woman in the way that she killed her. And you're right, the leaving of the scalpel there, it just shows there was some sort of directed hatred, it looks like, towards this woman, perhaps pure jealousy over the fact that she was able to have a child and that she was not.
And Reagan fought back. That was the other testimony that came out. She fought back so hard. Apparently, the thing starts in the garage, makes its way to the living room, the kitchen, the front door. I mean, there's blood everywhere. This was an all-out brawl because Reagan wouldn't give up. She dislocated a finger. She lost the tip of another finger. Most of her defensive wounds were on her hands. And that is how hard she fought to get this crazy woman off of her, which says a lot. It says a lot.
Who she thought was a friend, right?
Yeah.
Who I imagine when she first showed up at the house thought she was greeting a friend.
And it's the multiple ways that Reagan was killed, because she was strangled, she was hit in the head, she was stabbed, 100 times. They testified, the cops testified that they believe that Taylor took a mason jar that was filled with sand, which was from Reagan's own wedding, grabbed the mason jar. When you think about it, taking, a memento from the wedding, and smacks her on the back of the head. And that was the blunt force trauma. It's, oh my gosh. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah. It's unbelievable. So as we already knew that Taylor had gone to great lengths to fake everything with fake sonograms, a gender reveal party, right? All of this lunacy, the postings on social media. Okay, so everyone knew this part about it, and the baby bump, right? You did some a little research on where she got her baby bump from and all the fake stuff.
Yeah. So apparently she was going to this website, which is still active, called fakeababy.com, which just blows my mind that something like this exists. And that's what the entire website is dedicated towards, is fake sonogram photos and fake pregnancy tests results and a fake belly that you can use. And, the site presents it in kind of this whimsical, almost funny way. But what other purpose other than something nefarious like this would somebody have for using this type of stuff? And somebody did, to a very tragic end.
Yeah. And that's what helped perpetuate her fake pregnancy. These things which her boyfriend testified to, which were what he thought were supporting documents. He said, I saw medical records. I saw sonograms. She had a belly. He never felt the baby kick, because every time he put his hands on her, the kicking miraculously had stopped. Right, unbelievable. Right. And this is what I want to get to, is his testimony. And for those of you who are listening and not watching, we're going to put up a photo right now. And this photo really says it all. So it's a photo of Taylor looking very pregnant, and her boyfriend, Wade Griffin. Now, he's standing kind of behind her, and then he's kind of wrapped his arms around her, and then he has his hands on her belly. This is a picture that is duplicated millions of times around the world, right? We've all got them. Right. All of us who've had babies, we've all got them. Except this one, it was all fake. All fake. Okay, so let's get to Wade's testimony, because everyone wants to know, how did this guy not know? Well, not only did he testify, but Wade's mother testified. And of course, who knew? Wade's mother. Wade's mother was suspicious of Taylor the entire time. She tried to tell her son. He testified, she testified. I tried to tell my son she was no good, that it was a lie, that she was not pregnant, and he would not listen. In fact, Wade got so mad at his mother, he wouldn't talk to her for 4 months. So the mother is like, okay, I got to figure out how to help my son. But he wouldn't listen. Moral of this story, listen to your mother. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's more of what was revealed in his testimony. And all this is according to the incredible detailed reporting of KTAL TV. Amazing. So Taylor and Wade met at the rodeo. And then in August of 2019, she told him that she was pregnant quickly after hooking up. So, but this is the amazing thing. This was the second time she convinced him. This was the second time. The second time. So here are the details of the first fake pregnancy. Okay. She tells him that she's pregnant, but then she tells him, oh, I lost the baby because farm equipment malfunctioned and hit me in the belly and I miscarried. This is her first story. I think what happened was Taylor didn't have all her ducks lined up, right? And the whole thing, the baby bump, all this, she needed.
She hadn't received the package from fakeababy.com yet. So she had to stall. Yeah.
Exactly. I think it wasn't all set up and she just needed a little time. And so she tried this again. So now the second time her belly's growing, she's got all the fake bumps. And Wade testifies that he actually went with her to the doctor's office. But he was always forced to wait in the waiting room. He was never allowed to go in because Taylor would say, oh, COVID, oh, this, oh, that. So the guy goes to the doctor's office. He believes there's a real doctor, but he's never let in. So then finally he says, okay, I can't keep taking time off from work to go to the doctor's office, not be allowed in. And then she would present him with medical records, sonograms, right? Whatever supporting documentation that the guy needed. So that kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you hate to lay this all at this poor guy's feet, right? I mean, he didn't do anything wrong here. I don't know his level of sophistication. I don't know what experience he has with partners being pregnant before, but it seems as though her scheme was so elaborate that you can kind of understand. Plus, the alternative for this man is the idea that someone is lying to him on a daily basis about a pregnancy. So that's insane, right? That alternative is very insane. And maybe he's just trying to say, well, listen, this is all a little bizarre, but I'm doing my best to just kind of work with it. And she's presenting me with photographs and documents. Who am I to question how things should go? I feel bad for this guy.
There's a part of me that does feel bad. He's not the one who did this to Reagan, but he does. Right. He even said that he feels badly. He feels like in some way he contributed to this, to not having stopped her or done anything. But at the end of the day, Wade's mother knew and she tried to warn him and so did others. Okay. So yes, I'm going to get into the tangled web and how she managed to continually keep him confused. And it'll show some lack of sophistication. But again, it doesn't take a genius to figure out this woman was nuts.
Right.
Okay. He also testified that every morning he woke up, she would already be in the bathroom and he could hear her throwing up because of her morning sickness.
So elaborate. She thinks of every detail. It's incredible.
Oh, yeah. She's a good one. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So then here's the other thing that she did. And we kind of alluded to this a little bit in the first podcast, but now we have better details that makes more sense. Taylor created an alternate universe. Yes, in the one in which she pretended she was pregnant, but it went way beyond that. She created a series of fake people with phone numbers, and these people, but it was really Taylor, were communicating with the boyfriend Wade. So Taylor really does have a mother, but in this fake story of hers, in this fake world of hers, she convinces Wade that she has a crazy mother. They're very wealthy. They have $20 million and there's Uncle this and there's so-and-so and there's so-and-so. And Wade thought over the course of all these months that he had a relationship with all of these people because they communicated with him via text. But isn't it interesting? Every time Wade called them, he went to voicemail.
Right. My God, this was a full-time job for her. The amount of work she put into fooling this poor man and trying to at least fool everyone else, not mom, but this is just an incredible amount of work. It was a day-to-day thing that she worked on. I can't imagine what else she spent her time doing.
I'm exhausted just talking about
Yes.
it. So can you imagine trying to keep this straight? But again, Wade's mother saw through this. So one of the stories was that the Taylor's fake mother was like horrible and abusive, and she had surveillance cameras, and she was watching all of them, right? And that's how horrible she was. And when Wade explains to his mother, it's like, Ma, you don't know. She's got surveillance cameras on my cabin. She saw that I was like holding a coffee cup in the backyard. And Wade's mother says to him, Wade, who knows that you had coffee in the backyard? Taylor does. It's Taylor. Yeah. It's not her mother. It's not surveillance cameras. Again, Wade's mother got this.
Yeah, nothing gets by mama.
No. Well, also, it's less like, really? It's like this is a kind of a ruralish area, and like, really? She's got surveillance everywhere, and this woman's a millionaire? Please, let's get into the finances, because this was part of the web that kept Wade in the relationship. But I think also it was so distracting because there were a million things going on all at once, in addition to the fake pregnancy. So, she convinces him that she's worth millions. She shows him fake bank accounts, documents. The woman's amazing when it comes to faking everything. Okay. So then he thinks they're coming into a bunch of money, and he goes out and he buys some things and, basically takes a loan out on them, right? He signs for this stuff. He goes out and he buys a $92,000 pickup truck. He buys 20 head of cattle for $21,000. Then she gives him a cashier's check, which one would think that the cashier's check was real, right? Because we know those are harder to fake. For $63,000 to buy a tractor. He buys the tractor, but then the check bounces because it's fake and they repossess his tractor. So now he's under a great deal of financial stress. He testifies that he is way in debt. I mean, he's into debt way over $100,000 at this point. And so he has the mounting pressure of the debt. When's the money going to come through? If I leave her now, she's not going to pay. Do you know what I mean? So he was definitely right.
When you're in that much debt and you're thinking that there's some big payday for you at the end of all of this, there might be a lot of stuff you're willing to ignore, right? Maybe a lot of things that you're hearing from mom that you're willing to ignore because you got bills to pay. Yeah, that explains a lot.
Yeah. And there was a lot of trouble at work, too, because he's missing all this time at work because of Taylor and her fake pregnancy. Oh, my God. But the last one, this is the one that really got me. I couldn't even believe this. I thought to myself, oh, boy. She wrote a check for $8 million, and Wade took it to the bank to cash it. And the teller had to explain to Wade, for sums this large, we generally wire the money.
Please tell me it was a personal check she wrote to him for $8 million.
Can you believe this?
with the butterfly background printing on the check, right out of her checkbook. Incredible.
Unbelievable. And Wade goes to the bank believing this. So when you consider that context, and you put that up against a fake pregnancy, he certainly believed a lot of fake stuff.
He did.
He did. Really, this testimony is honestly unbelievable. And that's why I thought it was so important you all hear this, because again, you're all asking, how? Well, here's some of it. So here's the other thing. The due date's coming, right? Because she can't be pregnant forever. So it was about a week when she's trying to induce labor, and I couldn't even believe this part, but he testified to it, and it was corroborated. Each day that she had fake scheduled the inducing of labor, something tragic and traumatic happened. One day, Wade's house catches fire. When I read that, I'm like, no, this is not possible. Until they had a forensic expert testify that there was a fire deliberately set under the man's house.
Wow.
On the day they're going to the hospital, his house catches fire.
Just spiraling out of control.
Then the next day, back to the hospital again. This time, a bomb threat is called into the hospital and everyone has to evacuate. And of course, They can't possibly induce labor. Can you believe this? And these things really did happen. The police corroborated that there was a bomb threat at the hospital.
And is all of this just because she's trying to buy time to figure out when to get Reagan alone?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
How just insane.
Yes. I'm not even done yet. I wish they had televised this. I honestly wish they had televised this court case because this is so extraordinary. You just can't make this crazy stuff up. And that's what Wade said. He said, how could I believe anybody would make this up? I mean, it's so crazy. Well, they did.
There's some sense to that, right?
Right. There is some
so
sense.
Crazy. Yeah.
Because there really was a fire at his house and there really was a bomb threat at the hospital. Okay. So let's get to the day of the murder, which is the day that she's supposed to go and induce labor. They get up early and she's supposed to go with him. She's got a plan. She needs to get Wade out of the way. So she sends him to Oklahoma. She says, I've done this deal and I'm buying you some hogs. Just go to this farm, pick up the hogs. This idiot drives to Oklahoma, knocks on the farmer's door and says, I'm here to pick up my hogs. And the guy's like, who the hell are you? What are you talking about? So he's all confused. Wade is like, I'm here for my hogs. Well, of course there are no hogs. Meanwhile, she needed to get Wade out of the way so she could kill Reagan.
Incredible.
Right?
The planning. I'm telling. I mean, it is more and more chilling to me as you're telling this to me with the more and more planning that you realize she put into it. That the fixation this person had on doing all of this, none of this was spur of the moment. This was planned out for months, the scheme, and now just all of the elaborate stuff that goes into the murder itself.
And so when Wade finally does get to the hospital because he thinks that Reagan is there, he doesn't, Taylor is there. He doesn't know about Reagan. He doesn't know anything. He's just going to the hospital because he knows what time she's having labor induced. He goes to the nurse's station and he asks for Taylor. And she just points him in the direction, doesn't say a word. 3 cops arrest Wade immediately because by this time, Reagan is dead. Taylor's in custody. Braxlynn is dead. I mean, this is what Wade walked into, okay? So here's the other thing that was revealed in the testimony. Taylor did a run-through the day before based on her GPS. They were able to track her location and what she did. So, and even at the exact same time almost. So she did a complete run through the day before she went to Reagan's house to kill her. Isn't that something?
At this point, none of this is what I would call shocking, but it still is just, again, I go back to how disturbing it was, the amount of planning that this person put into this.
Mm-hmm. And there were burner phones. So Wade and Taylor had burner phones. She explained, and Wade explained, that the reason he had these burner phones is because Taylor's crazy mother was doing all this surveillance on them and they needed safe phones to communicate because the baby was coming.
Every angle was covered.
Oh my God. Okay. So Taylor never testified in her own defense. What would she have said? Although, and who wants to hear from her? I'm sorry, but nobody wants to hear from this lunatic. But what they did do is the prosecution played videotapes of her interrogations. During these interrogations, when she's first confronted, she's screaming, "No, that baby's mine." Okay, crazy. Then her story starts changing. Then she says, it was an accident. Reagan accidentally was dying, had injured herself. And she says to the police, Reagan said to her, "Please save my baby. Cut it out and save it."
Making herself a hero is the way she's trying to portray herself. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Well, this is just a sick charade, and I don't want to talk about this woman anymore. I mean, I think we've been able to paint a picture for you of who she is. Obviously, Wade has lost his job. His entire family has been impacted by the shame of this. Reputations are ruined. He feels horrible. He says he feels guilty for having bought any of it. and whatever possible contributions that had to this horrible day in which Reagan was killed. Well, Taylor Parker was found guilty of capital murder for the death of Reagan Simmons Hancock and Reagan's unborn child, Braxlynn. Taylor reportedly showed no emotion in the courtroom when her sentence was read. For the first time, the actress had no reaction. Really? Hard to believe.